Thank you so much for streaming our latest message from First Baptist Church. Here at FBC, our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. We do that by thinking big, thinking small, thinking in, and thinking out. We hope that this message helps you as you continue to grow in your faith. If you would like to stay connected to FBC, you can visit our website at fbcloyd.ca, look us up on Facebook and Instagram, or download our free mobile app. Now here's the latest from FBC. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Grab a seat. We've got another treat this week. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Is that coming? Check. How are we doing? Getting better? Yeah? You can hear me? Okay. We've got a treat this week. Last week we had Ruth Westfall with us visiting, and this week we've got another treat. Crystal Hoff is with us. Where's Crystal? You were over here in the first. There we are. Everybody, warm welcome for Crystal. Crystal is another one of us. She was one of our youth. You might have remember her as Crystal Gadsby. She was Crystal Gadsby back then. Crystal's gone on, and she is working with Hands at Work. And so she is instrumental, busy working with efforts in Africa to bring the good news of Jesus Christ over there through really practical ways. And she's home visiting with us. So if you haven't met her, by all means stop by and say hello, introduce yourself. She's going to be around after the service. And if you do know her, go back and say hello and catch up with what she's up to and so on. So we're excited to have her here, and how appropriate that she could be here as we're talking about thinking out this morning. If you haven't been with us over the last few weeks, I'm going to try and catch you up really quickly. We've been going through our FBC manifesto, sort of our new world order, if you will, as we look at our priorities, as we look at who we want to be as a church and what we want to try and accomplish. And so what we started off by talking about the fact that our mission here at FBC is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. That is always going to be our number one priority, is to introduce people and then help them to grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ because of who he is and what he has done for us. So that's our primary responsibility and our primary objective. Our goal or our vision to accomplish that mission is for us to be a church that everyone wants to attend, and where everyone that attends grows in their faith. Which is to say that we want to be a church that if somebody far outside the church today were to wake up and all of a sudden think to themselves, I should really check out church. For whatever reason, something happens, and they find that that's all of a sudden on their radar. We want to be that church. We want to have that reputation in our community. We want to be doing things that would put us on their map so that as they made that choice, as they made that decision, that they would say, okay, today's the day, I'm going to check out FBC. And then for those of us that are already here, we want to be that church where everybody wants to be here, where Sundays are not a drag that you dread, but rather that Sundays are something that you're excited about and that you're, just stoked to get here and be a part of it. Because what we're doing is relevant and what we're doing is valuable to you and your world, and that you've got a part that you play here in helping us to accomplish the mission that we're on. Our strategy then is what we've been talking about in specifics over the last 4 weeks. And our strategy in short is to think four-dimensionally, which is to say, think big, think small, think in, and then think out. And you can see what that means a little bit behind me up on those banners up there. This morning, we're going to be thinking about thinking out. We're going to be talking about that. And when it comes to thinking big and thinking small and thinking in and thinking out, we didn't come up with that on our own. We're not that smart. And as a matter of fact, we just don't even see the necessity of trying to think of something new, because God's given us these objectives in his word. And so we think big and think small from Acts 5:42, which says, day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah. At church, in our small groups, we want to be doing exactly the same thing, day after day, teaching and proclaiming that Jesus is the Messiah. And then think in and think out come from Matthew 22, verses 37 to 39, which says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. So this morning, as we come to thinking out, we find that it comes from the second greatest commandment, which is to love our neighbors as ourselves. You know, as we look around today, as we just encounter the world as we know it, it's not hard for us to understand that our neighbors are actually everyone worldwide. Globally, now we have the potential and the possibility of impacting neighbors all the way around the world. We're doing that as we come alongside Crystal and as she works with Hands at Work. As we support her, we have an opportunity then to touch our neighbors and to love our neighbors in Africa. And Ruth last week, she was here. She's in England. We have an opportunity to reach others through Ruth in England as we come alongside. We want to be a church that's always thinking out and that are involved on a global level to proclaim the good news that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So whether you can be here this morning, and I trust that somebody here this morning is the next Crystal, the next Ruth, that God is raising up and is going to call to go off to missions somewhere around the world. And I trust that we as a church will be behind them, that we'll be thinking out, and that we'll engage with them financially, in prayer, personally, as we stay in touch with them, and just kind of keep up with what's going on in their world, so that we can, again, impact the world around us. Internationally, nationally, even regionally. But this morning, I want to focus in on the fact that for most of us, our mission field is going to be right here. For most of us, our primary mission field is going to be local. And that we have been called to be messengers every bit as much as Crystal and Ruth and others that are going around the world. So as we dive into that this morning, let's stop first and let's just pray and ask God to be with us. Open up our hearts and minds to what he has to tell us this morning. Father, again, we stop and we say thank you for this opportunity to be here. God, thank you for this church. Thank you for the way that you have assembled us together so that we can be more than the sum of our parts in this way now, and that we can be a church that thinks out and that can impact the world as a whole, and our community in particular. God, to that end this morning, would you come and would you help us to see things from your perspective, that you would help us to think out in new ways, in more tangible ways this morning, for the sake of your Son, and in his name I pray, amen. All right. So as we come to this whole idea of thinking out, number one, we're thinking out when we look up. John 4:35 says, "Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest." Okay, this is Jesus here talking. He's talking to his disciples. And he's pointing out to them, you need to look up, guys. Look at the world around us. And he uses this image, this metaphor of a field that's ripe for harvest to equate to the people that are all around us. And Jesus says, I've come and I'm on this mission. And you guys are going to be instrumental now in taking this message out to the world around us, and they're waiting and ready. They need to hear this. So look up. Make sure that you see them. Don't miss out on what I need you to do, what I'm calling you to be a part of. No less today is Jesus coming to us and telling us, directing us to lift up our eyes, to look out and see the world around us, to see the people that are ripe right now, needing the message of who Jesus Christ is and what he has done for us. You know, I get it. We get absorbed in our worlds, don't we? we start to look down and focus on what we're doing. And as we do that, we kind of become insulated and isolated from the world around us. And then we become oblivious to everything else and everyone else. And it happens naturally. You know, we got things that we need to do. Priorities that we've got. We've got to work. And then we got to get the kids to school. And then there's dance. And then there's soccer. And then there's music lessons. By that time, I need a Tim's. If it's a really bad day, I might even succumb and go to Starbucks and spend $19. Right? And then, caffeined up, I'm ready to go again. So it's off to the bank. And then on to whatever happens in the evening. Maybe the gym, if it's a really bad day. Right? And day turns into another day, and then it's a week, and then it's a month, and then it's months. And by that time, I'm exhausted, so I need a holiday. So I take off, and then it's a year, and then it's play and repeat. Round and around we go. You know, this morning we need to ask God to come and do surgery on our eyes, to remove the cataracts that are our schedules, that keep us from looking up to see the people around us that need to know Jesus Christ. You know, I'm not much of a farmer. I've done a little bit of farming. Not enough to qualify as a farmer. I don't call myself a farmer. But as I was doing this farming thing, I understood this verse in a whole new way. As I would look out at wheat, and you see it turn that golden brown color, and I used to think that that's when it was ripe. That was when it was ready to go. But then I learned that there's this next step. It turns that golden brown. But then, as it turns to white, as that white shade comes over it, then that's when it's ready. And as I learned that, I also learned something else. I understood this verse in a different way because I understood the urgency in it. When that crop turns that white shade, when it's white unto harvest, it's go time. It is time to get out there and make that happen. And there's no time to waste. The longer that we wait, the more that it devalues. It degrades. Literally. Deteriorates. It becomes less valuable. Christ is saying, look up and see that the fields are white unto harvest. It's go time. We can't wait. We can't put this off. Because as we do, people die. Our crop diminishes. And they're lost. Number 2, we are thinking out when we stand up. Isaiah 6, verse 8 says, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying," this is Isaiah speaking, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Calls God. And Isaiah said, "Here am I. Send me." You'll remember that this passage is Isaiah's commissioning by God to be his messenger to the people. And so Isaiah's there and he hears God call and ask the question, "Whom shall I send?" And Isaiah stands up and says, "Here am I. send me. Isaiah volunteers to engage with the world around him. At that point, he's thinking out. And he steps up and says, I'm ready to go. You know, oftentimes I think we get to that point. We come to the point where we see the people around us. We actually do look up and look out, see them. But then we start to look at ourselves again. And we shy away from standing up and saying, here, God, here am I, send me. We look at our lives and we say, it can't be me. I am not good enough. My life's a mess. I haven't got this all figured out yet. I keep making mistakes. We need somebody to go that's got this figured out. It can't possibly be me. And so we sit down. You know, Isaiah had that same thing happen just a couple verses before. He arrives in the presence of God, and the first thing that he recognizes is his insufficiency, his inadequacy. And he cries out, woe unto me. I'm a man of unclean lips, from a people of unclean lips, which is to say, I'm a sinner in the presence of a holy God. And I'm inadequate. I am insufficient. I could die because of this gap that's there. But then what happens is as an angel comes and he grabs a coal off of the altar, and he comes and he places it on the lips of Isaiah. And he says to Isaiah, your guilt is taken away. Your sin has been atoned for. Which is just foreshadowing of exactly what Christ has done for each of us when we place our faith in him. Christ comes along and says, your insufficiency has been handled. Your sin has been atoned for. Your guilt is taken away. Now before God, you are good. You are good to go. So this morning, we can't let the fact that we aren't perfect yet become a barrier to us being the messengers that God is calling us to be. We can't let that inhibit us from looking out and standing up and saying, God, here I am, send me. You know, another thing that often keeps us from standing up is the fact that we look at our lives and we see that we don't have the resources. We look around and man, I don't have all the tools that I'm going to need for this job. I don't have any training. I don't know how to talk this stuff in sentences that make sense. What's going to happen is I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to make a mess. It's going to be worse than it was before. They're going to be more confused than when I started. And so let me just tell you that the Bible is full of stories about people that brought that argument up with God. As he came along and asked them to get involved, they would say, oh, wait a second, I just don't have all the tools that I need for this assignment. And Cole's notes on that is that God provides over and over in every way, shape, or form that is necessary. He provides. I don't have a plan. How are we going to take Jericho? God says, you don't need a plan. I got a plan. You're going to walk around it 7 times. Doesn't matter if it makes sense. Just follow me. I got a plan. I don't have the ability. They just threw me in a lion's den. Daniel says, God says, don't worry about it. I got you covered. I'll close up those lions' mouths. Israelites are in the middle of a battle. We haven't beat them yet. Not a problem, God says. I'll make the sun stop. When God comes along and calls us to an assignment, he shows up with his resources. And he says, you don't have to worry about it. I'm not calling you because of your ability. I'm just looking for somebody who's ready to stand up and say, yeah, I'm willing to go, God. I'll engage with you in this process. I'm looking out. Send me. Further to this, we've heard some of this stuff before. It's not new. And maybe this isn't either, but this is what really catches me when I read about Isaiah and I see him standing up and I think about all the things that are preventing me from doing the same thing. I think about my kids. And I'll tell you this. If my kids were dying, and I was there, I wouldn't stop to think about whether I was good enough, whether I had the tools. I would take my best shot to try and save them. And I think it behooves us to remember that God's asking us to love our neighbors. Love them like we love our kids, and even beyond that, maybe even to like we love ourselves, so that we don't get caught trying to do this math, but instead that we take our best shot, recognizing that people we love are going to die unless I try somehow to save them. And then I think about it on the other side of the coin. I think to myself, if I was the guy that was in the quicksand and I'm going down, and one of my friends, one of my coworkers, somebody that says that they care about me, one of my family, are there, and as I'm sinking, they look at me and they say, ooh, dude, I'd try, but I don't think I'm strong enough. So I'm sorry. Or, man, if I'd only brought rope, I would gladly do something for you. I think to myself, I don't ever want to be that friend that's standing there as one of my friends is looking at me saying, I'm dying here. I'm going down. Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to sit and do the math? I don't want to be that guy that stands around and doesn't do something. We've got to think out, and then we've got to stand up and say, okay, God, send me. Number 3, we're thinking out when we step up. Romans 10, verse 15 says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Man, if you're like me, you come to verses like this and you just skip past them. That's nice. How beautiful are the feet of those that bring good news. Really? Sweet. Next. Tim Keller, in his book, says this. His book is Jesus the King. I highly recommend it. He says this. You can see the difference between Christianity and all other religions, including no religion. The essence of other religions is advice. Christianity is essentially news. Other religions say, this is what you have to do in order to connect with God forever. This is how you have to live in order to earn your way to God. But the gospel says, this is what has been done in history. This is how Jesus lived and died to earn the way to God for you. Christianity is completely different. It's joyful news. So as we talk about that verse, as we come to that verse, it is good news that we have. It is good news that we bring to the world around us, which is amazing and it's awesome. But we also have to remember the middle of that verse. How beautiful are the feet that bring. Feet that bring are feet in motion. They're not sitting still. They're not sitting down. They're thinking out and they're stepping up. Church family, we have to get off our butts and get out there and take the good news to the world around us. We can't sit on it ourselves to the detriment of others. You know, I think we know that. I think we understand that. But unfortunately, we leave it at that. We leave it at what we know and what we understand. And it doesn't go beyond that. And I think that's because we don't put any requirements around it for ourselves. And so at the end of the day, we walk away and nothing changes. I know it. But it doesn't change the way that we live. In short order, we forget to look up. We forget to see the people around us going to hell without saving faith in Christ. At that point, there is no impetus for me to stand up and talk to God and say, hey, here I am, send me to solve that problem. And by then, there's no need to step up and walk across the room and talk to someone, walk across the office and get to know someone, walk across the class and introduce ourselves. So that one day, at some point, we can share with them who Jesus Christ is and what he's done for all of us. So today I want to take it another step further. I hope that we can go beyond just knowing and understanding it this morning. I want to put some requirements on this that I trust will help us to step up. You know, I'm completely convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that God has placed you exactly where he's placed you for specifically the opportunity that he has to touch the people around you with his message. That it's not by accident, but it's by design. And he's calling you to be his messenger today. To think out. And then touch people and share Christ with them. So I'd like to propose that we make a commitment this morning. Not a commitment to me, not a commitment to FBC, but a commitment to God. That in the next 8 months, that we will do everything that we can to bring somebody out to our small group or to church. Somebody that doesn't know God. You ask me, Doug, well, what's up with that? Why? How come small group? How come church? I thought we were supposed to be going with the good news. Just sharing with them about who Jesus Christ is. Why do I have to try and get them to come to church? Why is it that you want me to get them to come to small group? And I'll tell you. Because I'm afraid that you're like me. Because what happens with me is that I find a way to rationalize my way around this. That I think about being a messenger, and I figure that somehow as I walk through Bud Miller Park and I pick up a piece of litter and put it in a garbage can, that somehow God's going to use that to reach people for Him. That they're going to miraculously understand what this is all about just because I've done that, because I've stepped out and I've done the right thing. I think what I need, and maybe what you need today, what we need as a church, is to put some requirements around that define it. Because I think this, if I take this commitment to try and invite somebody to church or to invite somebody to my small group, I'm pretty sure that at some point in that discussion, in that process, I'm going to get an opportunity to share why I'm asking them to do that. And that's going to be me taking steps towards actually sharing the good news. You know, as a church, we do a number of different things to try and facilitate that process. We've got FX experience, family experiences coming up. Movie nights, packing parties for the shoe boxes. We've got a community Christmas banquet coming up, a traditional one and a community one, where we bring these opportunities, quality opportunities, with singing groups in one and comedian in another, that give us this opportunity to reach out and talk to our friends, our neighbors, our classmates, and say, hey, come on out, join us, check this out. And they can be bridges towards us coming to church, towards getting them to come to church, or getting them to come to small group. We do lots of these things. Engage in them. Start to engage today with God. Pray about it. Ask Him who He has for you. And here's the thing. I'm going to guess it's going to take a lot of tries. It's not going to be the silver bullet, where I know exactly who it is and they just dive in right away. We're going to have to put ourselves out there. We're going to have to talk to people and see who it is that God's working in their lives, that's interested, that would take that next step. As we come to the communion table this morning, we stop here and we remember the fact that Christ looked up and He saw a world dying and going to hell. And so He stood up from His throne and He said to the Father, here I am, send me so that I can go and do for them what they can't do for themselves. And then He stepped up and stepped into our world so that He could live and die on our behalf. So that we could come to know God through Him because of what He's done for us. That's what we remember here. But this morning I would ask that you would also stop and you would contemplate now that commitment. That you would think about engaging with God, standing up with Him today and saying, here I am, send me. Somewhere in the next 8 months, God, can you help me find somebody that I could bring out and share the good news about who you are and what you've done for us? Would you help me to think out today? I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward. They're going to distribute the elements. You don't have to be a member of FBC to take part in communion. There's only a couple of requirements. Number one, you need to be a believer. You have to come to that point where you have placed your faith in Jesus Christ. Secondly, you have to be in good standing with other believers, which is to say that you can't be holding a grudge or holding something against someone this morning. If that's the case, then I'd ask you not to participate until you can get to that person and get that right with them. If you're a parent and you have kids here this morning, you're responsible parents to make sure that your kids are in that place so that they don't partake in this unworthily. I'm going to ask the servers to pass out the elements. I'd ask you to take them and to hold them, to contemplate that commitment before God. And once everyone has received, then I'm going to pray, and then we'll partake together. As the last people are being served, would you just bow your head with me and pray? Father God, we stop and we remember today what you've done for us. Lord, I pray that today it wouldn't just be a memory, but that it would be an impetus for us to step out and engage with the world around us, that we would think big, God, and take your message to our church and to our small groups. That we would also engage with you personally and then take your message out to the world around us today. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you've accomplished on our behalf through your death and resurrection. I pray that you would make us your messengers for your Son's sake. And in his name I pray, amen. Let's take and eat together. I hope that these last 4 weeks have been valuable for you. That together we'll be able to think big and think small, to think in and think out. I look forward to seeing what God does in you as we do that, and what he does through us as we do that. I look forward to seeing you next week too when Jay comes. It's going to be a great morning. He's traveled with Casting Crowns and Avalon, and amazing guy. We're excited to have him. Look forward to seeing you as we share Thanksgiving together. Have a great week. We'll see you then.